Hello, Dime Divas and Dime Daddies. It is Rachel, the Dime Diva, and I am here with the latest episode of Hoops, Helmets, and Heels. So, are you ready to talk some sports? So, today is going to be a NBA Bad Boys episode. This is volume 3 of our NBA Bad Boys continuing series, and yes, the NBA players continue to make the news with bad boy behavior, allegedly. And so we're going to break down all of the recent happenings today with two investigations that are ongoing with the Federal Bureau of Investigation in the United States, the FBI, or as colloquially they're known, the feds. They recently unsealed two indictments against various NBA players that we will be talking about today. The NBA players we will be discussing are Chauncey Billups, Malik Beasley, Damon Jones, Terry Rozier, and Jonte Porter. Everything that I'm saying in today's episode is alleged. Nothing has been proven in a court of law, and these investigations continue to be ongoing. So, we're going to specifically talk about two separate federal indictments. So, a federal indictment is a charging document. It's a document that's used by the government to create a legal ground and basis for bringing someone into custody, arresting a person, charging someone, etc. And there's two operations. The most government entities like to nickname their different investigations and stuff. So there's two that are at hand here. One is called Operation Royal Flush, and it's about rigged poker games. And the second is called Operation Nothing But Bet, and it is about sports betting, rigging scores, and giving insider information in order to help people place bets with apps like DraftKings, FanDuel, and the like. So let's dive in. The first person that I'm going to talk about is Chauncey Billups. And the sources that I used in my research on Chauncey's charging documents include the podcast and YouTube show Pablo Torre Finds Out. He's an investigative journalist who does a really good job with breaking down sports-related complex news stories. And also NBC News. There's a particularly helpful article by Andrew Grief and Rohan Nadkarni that I used to get my information here. So, Chauncey Billups, Mr. Big Shot. The way that I found out about Chauncey Billups being charged in Operation Royal Flush was through a text from my mom, who was just shaken and shocked that Chauncey Billups was being charged federally with various financial crimes. Chauncey has always been known as a good guy. When he was in the NBA, his nickname was Mr. Big Shot. He was known for being very even-keeled, very calm, very relaxed on the court, but also being a voracious defender and a floor general as a point guard. He's best known for his years with the Detroit Pistons, where he was actually an NBA champion in 2004. Chauncey was the finals MVP, and they ended up beating the Lakers that year. I remember that distinctively. I was a sophomore in high school, and I was an avid sports fan, as I still am now. And I remember being devastated that the Lakers were not going to win because we had the three-peat in 2000 to 2002. So Chauncey has always been a player that I enjoyed watching. And I always thought of him as a great guy. And not to say now that he's not a great guy, but he's not somebody that you would have pegged as being caught up in a federal investigation. He had an excellent NBA career. He was an all-star. He was all NBA. He was all NBA defensive player. He was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2024. And he had a spotless record as an NBA player and then as the coach of the Portland Trailblazers since 2021. But this all changed on October 23rd, 2025, when he was arrested by the Federal Bureau of Investigation for his alleged involvement in an illegal gambling scheme. So y'all, this gambling scheme is like something out of a 007 movie, something out of Mission Impossible. It's giving thriller, but campy type of thriller. The stuff that they were doing was very high tech, and they were getting a lot of money from scamming people. So the way that this rigged poker game that Chauncey allegedly was participating in over the course of years, the way that it was set up is that the organizers of the game would brag to other high net worth gamblers, people who had lots of money to put into the pot. They would brag to them and say, hey, I know these NBA players or former players who like to play cards, and we're setting up a game with them. Basically enticing them to join. Like, ooh, I want to play poker with Chauncey Billups. Ooh, I want to play poker with somebody who used to be an NBA All-Star, somebody that I used to watch on TV, somebody that I admire their prowess on the court. And so these players served as an enticement for the high net worth gamblers to come and play in the game. So they would set up these games in LA, in Vegas, in different gambling hotspots. And they would attract these high net worth gamblers, but the gamblers who were invited didn't know that the card games were rigged. So the way that they rigged these games was through using concealed technology, such as contact lenses and glasses that had different embedded tech that would allow them to read marked cards and determine what the hand was going to be in the poker game. They would also use rigged shuffling machines to shuffle the cards, and they also had a X-ray table that could allow the players to see what cards were in play. Now, there's a darker side to this game as well. It wasn't just scamming money from people, which in itself is a huge issue, right? It also involved organized crime, allegedly. So the indictment indicated that this rigged card game involved the Bonanno crime family, the Genovese crime family, the Gambino crime family, and the Lucchese crime family, which are all members of the American Italian mafia. And they would be involved, obviously taking a cut of the pot, as the mafia is allegedly known to do, but they would also be used as enforcers. So when the victims refused to pay their debts, the members of the crime family would use threats and intimidation to force them to pay. Now, in total, it's alleged that this scheme was able to generate up to $7 million in scammed money from these high net worth bettors. Now, this is a huge deal, obviously, because it is the use of the names, images, likeness of NBA players to scam other people, right? So having scammers as part of the NBA is a huge problem. However, this did not go into issues of integrity with the game of the NBA because they're not betting on games. So one thing I want to say, as we describe this rigged poker game, is that gambling is pervasive in the NBA. In my research for this episode, I was able to get a little bit more insight into just how much NBA players gamble. And it makes sense if you think about it, because these men are highly competitive. They have access to tons of liquid cash, right? It's not family money that's tied up in trusts and real estate and corporate and the stock market. They're literally getting infusions of cash into their bank account every 2 weeks. You know, imagine that instead of your paycheck every 2 weeks being, let's say, $1,000 or let's say $5,000. Imagine instead every 2 weeks you're getting $35,000 deposited into your account. So it requires so much infrastructure and so much financial literacy and prowess to be able to take that liquid asset and then invest it versus just frittering it away and spending it, because you can't foresee a time when you're not going to have $35,000 coming into your account every 2 weeks. And of course, those numbers can go even higher for the star players who are making 100 million or more per year. So these young men who are highly competitive, who have all of this cash being deposited into their accounts on a regular basis, are then stuck together for hours with nothing to do, right? You have bus rides from the airport to the arena. You have private plane rides all over the country to away games. And then when you're not playing games typically until 7 p.m. local time and you're on the road, there are hours between when you have shoot around in the morning and then you have the game at 7 p.m. There's also time when you're traveling and have like a travel day when you don't have anything to do on that particular day but wait until the next day. And some of the guys will, you know, bring girls. Some of them will have video games. Some of them will just nap or try to stay low key. But then some of the guys will gamble. So some of the popular games that they play are card games. I'm not really familiarized with a lot of the card games that were described as I was researching that. So I'm not going to go into much detail there. But basically, poker is one of them, but there's also other card games that they can play. And the pot is oftentimes, you know, in the thousands of dollars to win or lose. So gambling is a huge part of NBA culture. Michael Jordan was well known to gamble high stakes on golf rounds. Okay, so this is not something new to the NBA. Gilbert Arenas, who I will be doing a future episode of NBA Bad Boys on because he has a long rap sheet. He ended up getting suspended while he was with the Washington Wizards because of a dispute over a card game with Jarvaris Crittenden, his teammate. And they ended up having a dispute that was so intense that they both brought guns to the arena. So they brought guns to their place of work. And thank God nobody used the guns. But now looking back on it, I realized how serious that situation was because somebody could have lost their life. But we'll get more into that on the Gilbert Arenas episode. But just saying all that to say, keeping that in mind as we talk about Operation Royal Flush, because it really is within the culture of the NBA to have this kind of gambling happening regularly. So I feel like sometimes when something is so familiarized and regular and normalized, it can become easier to create gray areas or convince yourself that something is okay, even when it's not. So I'm thinking that may have happened with Chauncey, where he thought, okay, well, I've been playing poker, for all these years. I've been playing with the rich men, high stakes. Maybe all of these guys who are sharks, who are high net worth, they can afford to lose, a couple thousand, a couple 100,000 here and there. It's not going to hurt them. I can see how maybe somebody could develop that mentality. I'm not saying that is true for Chauncey. I don't know. But that's my perspective really on Operation Royal Flush. Now, there's a second operation that I told y'all about that is way more serious as it pertains to the integrity of the NBA. This operation that the FBI decided to dig into is called Operation Nothing But Bet. Now, in this operation, folks were alleged to provide insider information to bettors so that those bettors could go and place bets on platforms and win money. So in exchange for that information, the NBA insiders would be given cash or a cut of the proceedings or of the winnings. Now, Chauncey Billups was not actually named in the indictment for Nothing But Bet. However, there was a player who was described in the indictment, and that individual met all of the characteristics of Chauncey Billups, down to the dates of his NBA tenure, down to how long he's been in coaching, down to his place of residence. So there is speculation that Chauncey Billups is the individual named in the indictment. Now, what Chauncey is alleged to have done, potentially, in Nothing But Bet, is providing inside information about a Trailblazers game. Remember, he was the coach of the Trailblazers starting in 2021. He was alleged to provide information about a Trailblazers game in March 2023, indicating the team would be tanking and that several players would be sidelined with injuries. Now, Chauncey is currently on leave from coaching the Portland Trailblazers, but if the information about what is happening here with Operation Nothing But Bet is borne out, that will likely lead to a lifetime ban from the NBA. Because, like I said earlier, the poker thing, sure. If it's true, that's not good to steal from people. It's not good to be a person who tries to take advantage by luring people in and scamming them and scheming, right? But Operation Nothing But Bet goes to the integrity of the game, period. Basketball is particularly particularly vulnerable to schemes such as nothing but bet, because each individual player has such a potential to change the trajectory of a game. In baseball, for example, sure, the pitcher can throw the game and let people hit home runs left and right, etc. But then the offense can come and make up all of those points by hitting a bunch of home runs themselves. So the pitcher doesn't have the power to win or lose the game. In football, there's so many moving parts, right? An individual player only plays usually one way. Unless they're a phenom, they may play offense and defense, but most people only play on one side of the ball. And there's so many players on the field. There's too many variables, right? In basketball, each individual player has such a huge impact. And as we've seen from these superstar eras, one player can literally carry a team on their back, especially for one game. And then you add in the preponderance of prop bets in today's day and age. So a prop bet is a bet that's becoming increasingly common to see in sports betting, which allows you to bet on a particular outcome as part of the game, not including a win or loss and not including the overall points in the game. So for example, you can bet on the over for a player in rebounds. So I'm gonna bet that Shaquille O'Neal is going to score or is going to get more than 10 rebounds in this game. You can also bet the under. So I'm gonna bet that Shaquille O'Neal will get less than 10 rebounds in this game. Same for points. I'm gonna bet that Kobe Bryant gets over 50 points in this game. You can bet the under. I'm gonna bet that Kobe Bryant gets less than 50 points in this game. Now, when you're looking at a prop bet, that can be a huge determining factor when you have players who are giving insider information on themselves. And that's what we'll talk about with our next NBA bad boy, Malik Beasley. So Malik Beasley most recently played for the Detroit Pistons, and he is currently suspended by the NBA. So before we get to the prop bet allegations with Malik, I have to give a little background on him being a bad boy in his own right outside of the operation Nothing But Bet. So Beasley first came across my timeline with his drama, relationship drama with his estranged wife, Montana Yao, who is a very gorgeous Instagram model and a former pageant queen. So Malik and Montana have 2 children, and she was on the blogs a couple of years ago to speak on how she was mistreated by Malik and that she was filing for divorce. This was after Beasley was spotted with Larsa Pippen, who is the ex-wife of Scottie Pippen and the ex-girlfriend of Marcus Jordan, Michael Jordan's son. So she has some controversy surrounding her in various layers as it pertains to NBA players. Beasley has had legal troubles in addition to relationship troubles. In September 2020, he was arrested for marijuana possession and concealing stolen property, as well as brandishing a firearm. He pled guilty to making a threat of violence a felony in December 2020, and he served 78 days in jail. So the story behind this arrest and eventual jail time, and the reason that he is an individual with a felony, is so unfortunate. So they lived, Malik and Montana, they lived in a beautiful neighborhood where multi-million dollar homes were able to be toured and displayed to curious onlookers, people that, have never seen inside $1 million homes before, people that want to see how the other half lives. So there was like an annual parade of homes where certain homes in the area were listed as being open for viewership. And somehow Malik's home was put on that registry. However, he did not want anybody coming and touring his home, which we'll later find out why. So Malik and Montana, they had roped off their driveway so that nobody would come up and try to take a tour of their house. Mind you, there was a family of looky-loos, people that were interested, wanted to come. I would probably go myself. I'm curious. I'm nosy. So there was a group of folks who were in their car outside of Malik's home. They saw that it was roped off, so they were kind of, according to them, they were sitting around regrouping, trying to decide what to do next. And Malik approached their car, brandishing a firearm, pointed the firearm at the window, and said that they need to get off his property. Completely unnecessary, and unfortunate. And I mean, in my opinion, I don't know Malik. This is all based on my own personal opinion. He seems to be somebody who's unstable. He doesn't seem to be somebody who's acting in a way that's giving off stability. So once the police were called, as you would expect this white, yeah, I mean, the family was white. So as you would expect this white family to do, they called the police. And the police came and investigated Malik's home. They found over 2 pounds of marijuana and firearms in there. This is, it's not anything that's overly shocking given how Malik was presenting in his day-to-day life experience. So let's get back to Operation Nothing But Bet. On June 29th, 2025, the U.S. Attorney's Office announced that Beasley was under investigation for gambling and placing prop bets on NBA games. This is during the 2023 to 2024 season while he was with the Milwaukee Bucks. So the NBA initially examined Beasley, and there was nothing substantial found during the investigation. However, his involvement at the federal level is still up in the air, and there are sources. Obviously, I have not checked those sources myself, but there are sources saying that he's going to be next up in getting potentially roped into this. But Malik is maintaining his innocence. And he's also complaining that he's not been allowed back into the NBA because he says that he didn't do anything wrong. So Malik is alleged to have done the same stuff that I was describing with prop bets. So telling people, or knowing himself, right, placing his own bets, this is all alleged, that he was going to take himself out of games, feign an injury, or just not score as many points as he had the opportunity to, play differently, so that he could get the under on the line set by Vegas or whatever sports book that's being used, and be able to say, I'm not going to score as many points so that you can bet the under, and then that's going to hit. So it's basically guaranteeing a gambling victory. And once you're guaranteeing a victory, it's not gambling anymore. It's just fraud. So Malik continues to get into trouble, even as he is on suspension and awaiting what's going to happen with the feds. He was recently evicted, allegedly, from his downtown Detroit apartment and he has 2 lawsuits filed against him for unpaid rent, totaling $21,500. Allegedly, he's also been sued by his dentist and barber for receiving services that went unpaid. He's also being sued for over $2 million by his former agency in a breach of contract suit. So this agency, called Hazan Sports Management, alleges that Malik violated the exclusivity provision of his marketing agreement. They allege that they gave him a $650,000 advance on his marketing and endorsements. However, Malik terminated the agency in February 2025 before any branding deals or endorsements could be secured. Not that they would be secured now with the tarnishment over his reputation, but it's possible. And he has stated, Malik's attorney has stated that they are trying to settle out the case. It appears that possibly the issue may be that he does not have liquid assets right now. And again, right, what I was saying about having that money come in. This is the issue with a lot of NBA players that don't have financial plans or a understanding that the money could be cut off at any time. If you're getting, let's say, $40, $30, $40, $50, $60,000 every 2 weeks, if that immediately stops and you're getting nothing, you could see how somebody would have trouble paying their rent, paying a barber, paying a dentist. Where's the money? Because it's possible to keep spending the money as if it's always going to come in. So, I mean, this is also very telling in the situation with the next player we're going to talk about, Damon Jones. So I got a lot of this information on Damon Jones. They had a deep dive article with him at New York Times. Super helpful article, very interesting article. So Damon Jones is a fascinating guy. He's 49 years old, and he was charged in both federal indictments. He was named in both, unlike Chauncey Billups. He was charged in Operation Royal Flush and Operation Nothing But Bet. I've actually talked about Damon Jones before on Hoops, Helmets, and Heels. I was shocked to remember that I had actually discussed him. In a prior NBA Bad Boys episode, we talked about J.R. Smith, nicknamed J.R. Swish. One of the many skirmishes / tussles / issues that JR got into was a incident where he got into a verbal altercation with Damon Jones when Damon Jones was an assistant coach on the Cavs. During that verbal altercation, JR threw a bowl of tortilla soup on Damon Jones. So he is one of the few multi-time Hoops, Helmets, and Heels appearances in our early tenure on this show. So Damon Jones was a NBA player who had a middling, very serviceable career. He made over $20 million during the course of his NBA career, and he made some good relationships and was pretty well regarded within the league. He had a role as a coach on the Cavs during Ty Lue's tenure while LeBron was there. He became good friends with LeBron. And when LeBron moved over from the Cavs to the Lakers, after his second stint with the Cavs, Damon Jones followed him. And he was given special access to the team because of his friendship with LeBron. During the 2022 season, Damon Jones would be on the team playing, for sure playing cards with the guys. He was well known for being an avid card player, not a good card player, but avid. Just being a vibes guy, being around the team, helping LeBron with his rebounding, helping LeBron with his shot. He was not an official member of the team staff, but he was just around and hanging. So for Operation Nothing But Bet, Damon Jones is alleged to have provided bettors with advanced private information about LeBron and other Lakers players, including their availability for games. And Jones' associates are alleged to have placed bets based on this insider information and paying Damon for that information. This is all alleged. So one might ask, after making 22 or 20 plus $million in the National Basketball Association, why is this man hanging around the team? Why is he allegedly selling information for thousands of dollars? Why isn't he just relaxing at home, enjoying his fortune and living his best life? Well, it all goes back to financial literacy and the flashy lifestyle that the NBA often encourages because of the public nature of these players. According to this New York Times article, he spent most of, if not all, the 20 plus $million he entered his NBA career on expensive cars, clothing, and houses. He also spent a lot of money gambling. It got to the point that Damon Jones tried to declare bankruptcy twice in Texas, but both times the cases were dismissed. So he still owed all of the debts that he had accumulated. At that point, he went on to become an assistant coach. So I think at that point, after those bankruptcies, I think they were in 2013 and 2015, he realized, like, I'm going to have to go back to work. And so he started to do assistant coaching at that point in the G League, then for the Cavs. And then he went on to be like an attaché for LeBron in LA. But it was not enough. And so I don't know if any of these allegations are true, but it would make a little bit more sense to me why Damon Jones would be doing this versus Chauncey. So I'm not sure, but again, it goes to the idea that when you're making so much money at such a young age, not really understanding that you're going to need to have discipline in order to tell yourself, I'm going to need some of this in the future. Let's put aside half of every paycheck. Let's put aside at least blank $1 million into a Roth IRA or some type of investment vehicle before I can do any type of investing with my buddies, right? Before I can invest in my buddy's clothing line, or before I can invest in my buddy's restaurant or car wash. Let's first get that money into, at minimum, high yield savings, right? Let's make sure that I'm covered and my family is covered for the next 40, 50 years before I start helping friends and family members pay their car note or pay their phone bill or pay for girls to be flued out. But that takes so much discipline and so much devotion to your future self that I think a lot of players don't have that. But I think of somebody like Brandon Jennings, who when he first was drafted, it was really like emphasized and it was lifted up as a good thing, which I think is great, that he was driving like his used, Honda or a very consumer car, not a necessarily luxury vehicle, because he was like, no, I'm not going to squander my entire rookie paycheck or my signing bonus on getting a Lamborghini or something, right? There's priorities. And so I think that because these guys are so competitive, there could be a lot of keeping up with the Joneses, Damon Jones. That's funny that his name is Jones, but he was allegedly trying to spend to keep up with the big dogs on his roster. So when he was in Cleveland in the mid 2000s, I think somewhere between like 2004 to 2008, something like that, that was when LeBron was there. And LeBron was bringing in huge checks. LeBron was bringing in top of the NBA money. So I think some guys, when they're competitive, they look at that person and they're like, I want to get what they get. I want to get the same car as LeBron. I want to live in the same neighborhood. And not really having that realisticness of saying, I can't live in the same neighborhood as LeBron. I'm gonna have to live in a lower tier neighborhood. It's still a really nice house, but I'm not gonna be able to live like him because I'm not making as much money as he is. You know, LeBron makes more money in 1 year than he made in his entire career. So, you know, when I hear stories like this, I hope that there are younger players taking this to heart, and their wives and their moms and their loved ones and their advisors who are just helping them to learn from those that have gone before them, to learn how to build generational wealth, not just wealth that's going to be flashy and for the moment. All right, let's move on to Terry Rozier. So he's a 31-year-old guard for the Miami Heat who has been in the NBA since 2015. Rozier was paid $100,000 allegedly while playing for the Hornets to take himself out of a game. So this is part of Operation Nothing But Bet. And allegedly, this took place on March 23rd, 2023. He told the bettors he would take himself out of the first quarter of the game with an injury. And then the bettors placed prop bets on the under for his scoring. So given how low-key of a player Terry Rozier is, people immediately started questioning, like, the betting houses. They started questioning, like, why are people placing bets on Terry Rozier? And what's going on here? So they immediately reported it to the NBA. Investigation started. Now, the NBA didn't tell anybody, though, allegedly. They didn't tell the Heat. They didn't tell anybody that they were looking into Terry. And so Terry continued to just play as if everything was normal. But it really does beg the question, if this is true, he's getting paid millions of dollars. Like, why are you going to do $100K for taking yourself out of the game? Now, what I do think is, again, this is all theoretical on my part, but I think that some of these guys might have survivor's guilt. Okay. So Terry was allegedly doing this activity with a friend. So like there was a friend who was kind of like a plug, right? He was helping Terry to sell this information to other people, et cetera, et cetera. I think that some of these guys, rappers talk about this a lot in their songs. My favorite rapper, Lil Baby, talks about this a lot. Like, not everybody can come to the top with you. I think some of these guys have been hanging out with the same guys since middle school and high school. Those are the guys that they know are loyal to them, that love them, that have their back. But I think sometimes it feels weird, like even though they're always going to be the ones paying when the guys go out, they're always going to be the ones getting rooms for people if they're going to go to Vegas and, you know, getting the sections, if they're going to go clubbing, they still know and understand that like their buddies may actually be broke and like struggling to survive. You know, I heard about Little Dirk at one point paying for one of his boys' baby shower. Like his boy was that broke that he didn't have money to throw a baby shower. And then Dirk is a multimillionaire. And so I think it's possible, if this did happen with Terry, that he may have that survivor's guilt where he's like, I'm making millions of dollars. My bro is somebody that I grew up with, that we grew up the same way. Now I'm flying around the country on private jets. I'm getting all of this cash infused into me constantly. And like my guy isn't even asking me for a handout, really. He's just telling me that this is a way that we could flip it and make, 100 grand, and that could set him up to actually be financially stable for a while. So I could see that happening. I don't know if that's the case, but those that are kind of like, why would this dude making millions? He's a good NBA player. Risk getting banned for life from the league for 100 grand. I think we forget oftentimes that human beings are human. We're social creatures, and so no matter how wealthy or destitute a person is, we're all influenced by other people. And so if we feel like other folks are going to shun us if we don't go along with their plan, or we could lose um, close relationships, a lot of people are willing to do things that are not in their best interest. So I don't know, Terry. We'll see how it goes. Our final guy is Jonte Porter. Now this one is really sad, you guys. It makes me sad to think about the Porter family, honestly. Jonte is a obscure NBA player who was facing his huge gambling debts in 2023 and 2024. So he allegedly feigned injuries to get out of games multiple times, so that a group of folks who were all in a text thread together on the app called Telegram, they could bet the under on his performances. So he would have this group chat and tell them, I'm planning to take myself out of the game, and they would make the prop bets. Jonte was banned from the NBA in April of 2024. He is I believe, admitted gambling addict. If it's not admitted, then I think he should admit it to himself, allegedly. But the thing that makes it really sad is that they have a family of people struggling with addiction. Jonte's younger brother is in prison, I believe, right now, for killing someone, drunk driving, right? And so, in my opinion, when you see a family who has a lot of addiction in the family, there was probably something going on in that home when they were growing up. You don't just have a family that like everybody is and I'm not saying everybody is. You don't have a family with multiple addicts unless there was something that these people are running from. And I'm side-eyeing the parents. That's all I'm saying. Now, Jonte's older brother is Michael Porter Jr., MPJ. He is a very solid NBA player. He seems to be okay. I hope he's okay because, having all of this, what I would assume is trauma in your family leading to these addictions, I'm sure was not easy. So I wish him the best. I hope that he's getting the best help that money can buy. I hope he's learning from his siblings that falling into addiction is not the way to go. And I'm wishing him the best. So also notably, not only did Jonte allegedly sell information, he was betting himself. And this is what makes me think that he is a gambling addict, because it's like, bro, at that point, like you can't stop yourself. He allegedly placed at least 13 bets on NBA games using an associate's online betting account. He also bet that the Raptors would lose. On March 20th, 2024, he also was alleged to give confidential information about his health status to NBA bettors, the parlay situation. So I think it's interesting because he was alleged to have given this information on March 20th, 2024, and he was banned from the NBA in April, the next month. So this gives me a little bit of pause with the NBA for the fact that they never shared the details about Terry Rozier's like warning signs with the teams, and they have yet to really like dive in on the Malik Beasley situation. It makes me think that the bigger the star, the less that the NBA wants to admit that the person has been gambling, because it makes the sport look unreliable. That's just my take on it. But yeah, you guys, it's unfortunate. All of this stuff that's happening is super unfortunate, and I truly hope that this investigation is able to, number one, be accurate. I hope that nobody who's innocent is getting set up. Number two, I hope that anybody who is suffering from addiction is getting help. And number three, I do hope that folks who are in professional sports right now are getting all the help that they need in terms of guidance financially, but also when it comes to the fact that sports gambling is now pervasive. So I hope that people are getting the right kind of guidance and the right kind of insight on, how to handle navigating this environment. There is help out there, and these guys have resources to access it, but it's a matter of admitting, like, I don't know how to navigate this perfectly. I can bring in another person to help me with the load, that kind of thing. Anyways, thank you for going down this path with me. I hope that it helps you to understand Nothing But Bet and Royal Flush, those two operations, a little bit more. And we will definitely be continuing to monitor the situation here on Hoops, Helmets, and Heels. All right, y'all. See you next time.